Well, good morning again, everyone. So the title for this session, as you see here, is AI in Higher Education for Real. So I'm Dr. Deborah Hazzard still. This is Shane Snipes, and we have Dr. JoAnn Rolle or Dr. Shane Snipes. Would you all like to do just a very quick little intro before we get started?
Sure. So, Dr. Shane Snipes from the Borough of Manhattan Community College, part of the CUNY system here in New York City. So my perspective on things comes from being a deputy chair of the business department with 4,000 students in it, and having the perspective of teaching classes around entrepreneurship and marketing.
My name is JoAnn Rolle. I am the former dean of the School of Business at Medgar College, City University of New York. I retired from that position a couple of years ago, but I've still been very active in consulting and research as James Rolle and Associates LLC.
Very good. Thank you so very much. So we're going to spend just a little bit of time here, hopefully in an interesting dialogue, and then at one point have you all join in as well as we begin to sort of talk a bit about AI in higher education. Again, this is a multi-level case study from the dean's office to the classroom. So basically, most AI conversations in higher ed live in three places from what we see, either hype, fear, or policy documents. Today, we're going to do something different. We're going to do a live case study from the dean's office to the classroom, where we will talk about what's actually happening, what's working, where the tensions are. And so hopefully you'll find this is a really engaging discussion. Our ask of you as the audience is not just to listen, but to try and diagnose your own institution as we go along. So with that, know that our agenda is going to initially consist of talking about some use cases. And then we're going to talk a bit about tensions in higher education. There'll be an interactive activity. And of course, there's the phone call that comes through while you're presenting. And then we'll do closing remarks. So that's pretty much where we are in terms of the agenda. So let's talk a little bit about some of our real world examples or use cases. So Dr. JoAnn, if we could start with you. You advise institutions. What's one case where AI policy has worked and one where it failed, or any other insights you would like to share with us?
Okay, thank you for that question. I won't name the institution because there are many. As soon as generative AI came out, a lot of institutions just went, we will ban it. The students can't use it. And of course, they did. Because the data says about 80% of students worldwide are using the technology, but only maybe 10% of the institutions have even addressed policy. What are the policies and the guardrails that we should have around this new technology? And it's not just AI. I always say AI is emerging technologies because there are some technologies in the lab that's about to come out that will morph AI. Let me say, one of the experiences is it just came to market to the public, but these technologies have been within the industry and private corporations for a while. I'll give you one Evans College example. We're right in the New York City area, so we have access, or they have access to us in our campus, and the international firm from Europe, pre-COVID, talked to us about having our students involved in their artificial intelligence platform. It was an accounting platform. One of our faculty members, and we lost him in COVID, Dr. Tucker. He was a accounting professor, and he was our point person. They would come into the classroom and have a couple of lectures, but more importantly, they took on students. And why would they take on these students? They knew that it was going to be broader, and because of the problems with visas and international, they couldn't just bring all the people from Europe here that they wanted to cultivate. a workforce here. And so they paid them wages way above internship wages. And they worked with them. They wanted them to learn how to work with machines, because it wasn't just going to be humans only anymore, or machines only. They needed them to understand that the low level accounting skills were going to go away. As we've seen the early career market collapse, part of that is because the agentic AI economy is taking on some of the work that they used to do. But they say there's still a place for your graduates. They could do the higher level learning and creativity and I call it curating. And we don't want them to be stuck in those careers where they used to just do bookkeeping, because guess what? The machines are doing some of those bookkeeping. We might need them to look at and just double check, but we will not need the number of just bookkeepers that we used to need. So the higher level is, yes, you know, a lot of folks abandoned them, but the push wasn't coming from the academy. The push was coming from industry, and they are pushing us harder and harder and harder. So get on board.
All right. So that was really good. Love that. I heard you say the fact that there is a need for us to teach the students how to do those higher level, sort of deeper thinking type tasks. Certainly that AI can do the things that are more transactional. And so also that there is a need for integrated governance and training, right? And that we need to adopt. Dr. Shane, let's talk a little bit about your experience at the department leadership and also practitioner meetings. Can you share a use case?
Yeah, definitely. Being a practitioner in the classroom and using AI almost on an hourly basis with work that I do. And I think it's important for me to acknowledge the fact that we live in an academic environment and higher education environment where everything is siloed. And those structural silos isolate me as a business department from the computer science department, which also has a very robust artificial intelligence activities and reality of higher education. As far as breaking through those barriers, at this point, for where I am, it's above my pay grade, as we like to say in the US, where if I was paid a little bit more and had a different title, perhaps I could address this issue, but I don't. So at a departmental level, what I really think about is what are the templates and structures that I can give faculty to quickly learn how to use AI to do their top 10 things that they do every day, or their top 10 things that they do every week, or their top 10 things that they do every semester. Because if I can design that kind of thing, like I've done for my students in small business entrepreneurship, my professors in entrepreneurship, 3 of them are very proactive and 4 of them are not. And so first thing I had to do is figure out how to synchronize my 7 faculty, right? If I can't synchronize my 7 faculty, how am I going to synchronize my 122 faculty inside the business department? So that was my first deal. And behind all this is the thinking that it's not about looking at what the output is as much as how do we examine evidence of learning? And what is evidence of learning? Up until now, it's been taking a test. Up until now, it's been writing a paper. Up until now, it's been these different things. So we have to use AI as faculty and smart instructors and educators to basically revamp what it looks like to assess evidence of learning. And that's no easy task because it's things like weaving personal experience from the student into every single assignment. If you ask them to do something in an objective way, objectivity equals generative AI production of product now. So we must stop doing that and instead make education personal. And that's what our entrepreneurship faculty are doing by telling our students, what did you see today that relates to marketing for small business? How did you relate to that marketing? Why was it important to you? Why do you feel like you took that action? And give specific examples about being in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, not talking about generalities anymore or general commentary. And that's how we've designed the tools.
Thank you so much. So I love that. You really spoke to the fact that AI is really sort of forcing us to rethink how we assess and rethink learning value. So I really appreciate that. I will say, shameless plug, many of these things are sort of relating back to that model that I shared a little bit earlier. But anyway, so in addition to moderating the panel, my colleagues asked that I kind of provide some examples as well from the dean's perspective. So the prompt to myself was basically, what's one real decision or initiative around AI that has forced trade-offs? And so what I will share is the example that comes to mind for me is one of those pipeline programs that I have mentioned. So we have summer pipeline programs. We've been running them for a number of years. For the most part, we would just bring students on campus for a week. These students would be our South Carolina resident students. And again, for us, South Carolina resident students are underrepresented in our context. We would bring them on campus, let them have an immersive residential experience. They interact and engage with our faculty, with alum who hold significant positions in business. All of those things to really help them see themselves there in that environment and become more comfortable with what it is like to engage in that campus environment. So what I really began to look at about a year ago is how we needed to sort of rethink the programming in our summer pipeline program. And so the one that I'm referring to in particular, and if you go to our website, you will see some of the historical information about it, but the program that we used to do was called Business Success Academy. Highly successful. Again, it was a feeder for our undergraduate, enrollment, or, a lot of students from our pipeline program were admitted to our undergraduate program. And it was not because we did anything in terms of relaxing standards or whatever. We attracted the best and the brightest, and they wanted to come. So what we decided to do this particular year is to really sort of rethink our approach even to that, as it related to the summer program. So I partnered with a retired IBM executive. Her name is Kitty Cheney Reed. I'm going to give her a big shout out because she has been a godsend. But partnered with her actually probably about a year and a half or so ago. She and I began to just sort of network and engage, and I named her what I call an executive in residence for our department. There had never been one before. I made it up. It's another one of those pilot programs. Unpaid, I will say. She wanted to do it. She wanted to help out. So she's our executive in residence, but in that role, she's bringing IBM's resources to bear in terms of her knowledge, her insights. She's paired us with some executives. And so this summer, instead of doing this Business Success Academy program, we're launching a brand new one that is literally called More Launchpad. Again, we're the Darla Moore School of Business, so it's More Launchpad. And this one is focused on AI fluency, AI literacy for these high school students. So IBM executives are coming to us at no cost to us to deliver this AI content to these high school students. It's going to be rising 10 through 12, and we've actually decided to open it up to some of our incoming first-year students. So they've been admitted to the Moore School. They'll be joining us in fall 2026 as first-year students. We're going to have some of them join us as well, because it's going to help them get some competencies and some fluency around AI. So that was the trade-off. Business Success Academy was an extremely successful program. People knew about it. We had actually been getting requests from outside of the state of South Carolina. People were saying, why can't we do this? Why is it just for South Carolina residents? As successful as it was, we knew it was time to sort of rethink that, because it was incumbent upon us to ensure that we were getting those AI competencies and sort of building those capabilities that students need in order to be successful. So that's sort of my example of, from a dean's office perspective, that was a strategic decision that was made. Let's switch a little bit to this topic of some of the tensions. So as we were sort of preparing for this, we talked a bit about some of the tensions in higher education. And we have them listed here for ease of reference. Some of them involved innovation. So there's tension between innovation and policy. There is also tension between efficiency and human learning. We're going to kind of unpack that a little bit as we talk. Tension between experimentation and equity, and then also between AI literacy and academic integrity. Okay, so let's start out with, and we can just kind of let this be conversational, talk about it however you will, but let's just talk a little bit about some of those tensions. Let's see, I'm going to ask Dr. JoAnn to go first. You know, however you want to talk through it, but it could be, you know, how much structure is too much too early, are we over-regulating before we understand the technology, however you wanted to address it. Talk a bit about the tension.
Okay, so there are a lot of tensions inside higher ed, but there are also a lot of tensions that extend out to industry as well. One of the challenges, and I learned this when I was in many decades ago. I was in the software development, application software development department. And what I learned there was the coming of technology was changing so fast that if you didn't continue to learn, you could absolutely. And this was decades ago. App, it used to be 12 months on the shelf. Then 6 months on the shelf. I see some smiles of acknowledgement. Then 3 months on the shelf. Now, today, if an app lasts without a version change in a month, you're doing well. So with all of this change, how do you develop appropriate guardrails and policy to manage whatever is going on in the environment? For us, it's to manage the learning, academic integrity issue. Outside in the industry, it's, will the policy slow down the innovation, or will the innovation cause problems for the policy? What I see is being successful is if you write the policy before you have the innovation, you don't know what policy you're writing to. So you need to have some kind of handshakes. Once the innovation is happening, visit and revisit it with a policy that's appropriate. And it shouldn't be one size fits all. I talked about this when I talked about my presentation later. Right now, we have 5 generations in the workforce. Why? Because the baby boomers have the intellectual knowledge. They have the knowledge of the culture. They know what works and what hasn't worked. And then we have, okay, so the way Microsoft plays it, we have this, the senior cohorts and we have the emerging cohorts. The emerging cohorts, like the young lady you saw, your daughter, are digital natives.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of patience for us being a little more like me, explanation, because they've grown up with the technology. So in the workplace, you have 5 different groups. It's not just one group, because one size is not going to fit all. If you have a policy that's only directed to the boomers, you're going to lose the X's, the T's, and the alphas who's coming behind you. So you have to acknowledge that the workplace is not homogeneous, even by experience, geography, culture, and address that in your policy development. So that transfer of knowledge will be happening across the workforce. And I haven't even touched on the agentic economy that is coming up, meaning the agents are part of the workforce too.
So can you touch on that? I think that's relevant.
I am working.
I'm going to do that.
I'm gonna do that.
Stay tuned.
That will take a little more, but the org charts that we had before only address the leadership and the people in those functions. What is coming now or is now in some industries not industries, but some corporations is, they have the functions with the agents. They have the people with the function. You are working with machines, whether you know it or not. So how do you address that? Because we talked about fear earlier. Are they coming to take my job? Am I going to become irrelevant? Well, what are you working on? If you're just working on, and this I'll touch on in the presentation too, if you're just working on prompting and not curating thoughts and your creativity, then you will have a challenge. I have a colleague in London, not anybody in this room, who said, JoAnn, you think you're in trouble now. Wait till some of those white collar jobs start disappearing because the agentic economy is working on the knowledge base now. So if this is happening, how do we in the academy not help just prepare our students, but prepare the faculty? The faculty we haven't been through this. Technology has changed, but never this fast. I know someone said, well, we've gone through technology change, so this is someone in industry. We've gone through this before, never at this rate of speed. That's the issue. The workforce has always had more time to upskill, to retool. Now that time, so I'm gonna give it over to
Well, that was excellent. I'll just say, just for additional context, when we were having those technology issues with the video playing behind your presentation, that was my daughter who works for Microsoft that stood up and came up here and fixed everything, and now she's exited. But that's the digital native that came up and helped to do that. So, Shane, can you talk a little bit about some of those tensions and give us some insights from your perspective?
Yeah, I really like these tensions the way they laid out, because it gives us a very good picture at a departmental level too. When I think about my universe of my students in the business department and all the students studying from all those different majors, I'm heartened by the fact that I live in a department in a bubble that lets me be innovative. Right, that lets me break things, that lets me push the boundaries, that lets me email directly CUNY, right? And even though I get in trouble for it, they protect me from my innovative behavior, right? And because we don't have a lot of policy at CUNY, because each college gets to exist in its own little universe, and then in some ways, each department gets to exist in its own little universe, we have all these little micro universes. That's why when we talk about these big picture structures to try to solve the problem of AI across the organization, it still doesn't ring true. I want to be honest with you. There's a level of falsehood that we're talking to ourselves about, in the sense that we haven't figured out how to even talk to each other yet across the institutions. So I don't know how to solve that. But when we talk about this idea of innovation versus policy, that's what it feels like to me at the departmental level. Even though I have leadership at the departmental level, I still feel that real disconnect. And then we're all about efficiency these days, right? This idea that we can get more efficient with these AIs, we can be more efficient with these AIs. But efficiency isn't the solution. The solution is us figuring out what human learning looks like. And I think AI can help us do that. But we have to develop ways of putting human learning, not in the context of just pedagogy, but in the context of what we're all trying to accomplish together. And because if we all really do in our department meetings, and I do really pray for this day, but if we could get everyone in my department to all have their agents working with them during a meeting, so that they can get closer to understanding each other and not just letting words fly by each other, but instead put things into place, then I think we'll be in a better place if we just accept the fact that we have this co-creation agent, which is what I want to talk about tomorrow in my session. What is a co-creation framework? And how do you make co-creation a human learning experience? So that's what I really feel when I see these things, and all of them really, I could speak to all of them, just like I think we all have this ability up here in this panel. But I wanted to share that I feel some disingenuousness in hearing these things, I understand them, but in putting them into the real world, I want us to respect the fact that there is intense friction between those things. And we need to somehow to address that. So.
I love that. I love that. I will just very quickly, what I'll share relates to AI literacy and academic integrity, that tension. I'm inclined to look at the innovation and policy piece, but I talked about that a little bit earlier. I think that at least in my experience in talking with a number of faculty, they are inclined to just ban AI use, just tell them they can't use it. You can ban it if you want to, it's being used, right? So I think that instead of banning it, I think what it's incumbent upon us to figure out, as you all have said, structure assignments differently. So that's where we have to step up our game as faculty. From an administrative perspective, I feel like what we have to do is ensure that from a governance perspective, right, we have these certain levers like policies, make sure that the policies are in place, but I don't think they should restrict AI use. I think they should provide some guardrails for using AI, right? So in my syllabus in particular, because believe it or not, with all the hats that I wear, I still teach. And one of the things that I do is I actually have a policy in my syllabus where I allow AI use, but I'm saying what you've got to do is you've got to tell me where you used it in doing this work, how you use it, give me some specifics. And at one point in one of the classes I was teaching in spring 1 of this year, really as I was starting to get into all of this and just realizing that in some ways we're kind of missing the boat in terms of preparing these students to engage. I was teaching a class of mostly graduating seniors, and I said to them, how many of you have claimed your ChatGPT account that the university has paid for all faculty, staff, and students to have? Maybe 3 of about 30 in the room raised their hand. Only about 3. Okay, they hadn't claimed their account. Okay.
Yeah, just to, I'm sorry to intrude, but just to add on to this thought, much as we are in this like, faculty or admin, we are in this confusion of what's going on, what will happen, what are we here for? I feel there's the same state of confusion going on with our students as well.
Absolutely.
And as I think she pointed out, there's a huge digital divide in terms of AI literacy.
Yes.
I see that in and out in terms of, where they're coming from, what's their background, which school district they graduated from. And then again, to piggyback on what you said, in terms of building the high school partnerships and having them streamline and come on to, instead of getting that brain drain out of in-house, in-state, it is so applicable. And I feel that there is a big gap between departments, big gap between faculty and students, big gap between students, faculty, and admin. And if we could, again, to add on to what you were saying, that even we are trying to figure out how it works. Me and Raj, Dr. Mukherjee, of course, we are from 2 different disciplines, School of Business, School of Education, Curriculum Instruction. So we studied our undergrad classes together at the same time when we decided, okay, why not we try and assess them on a unit and let them use AI. And in doing so, what we found out that there needs to be a very specific, objective-based alignment of what we are reaching, what we want to do with our students, how we can help them connect to reach those objectives through AI. And we developed a framework which we very fondly call it as a PrEP framework. We say, in the use of AI, we say it's preparation, and this was from my last year's presentation. Prompting, that's what P stands for, role, specify where and what question you're asking AI. provide an example as a faculty, that is what we could do, help them understand where they could use it, because I love this generation. They are full of energy, they know how to use AI more than what we do, sometimes we step forward. And then finally, parameter, giving them the boundaries, defining boundaries, where to stop and where to use their critical thinking.
Right.
So that is how we developed the correct method, and I feel it is so very, relevant here.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. I will tell you that at our, yes, Mommy?
So thank you so much. I think from my own perspective and from my institution, I think Dr. Gata can attest to this. We were still in the dark in the sense that the policy of AI, usually in my institutions, and I say too harsh. In the sense that because we have to identify, when we have different types of AI, generative AI, can we penalize students for editing or facing this assignment through AI? If it's counting, it's highly debated and agreed. Certainly, if you use AI, can you specify what kind of AI did you use? What did you use it for? Otherwise, because we are pointing to them just for nothing. Some students will say, oh, if you go to this institution A, we will not allow you to use it. If you go to institution B, they allow you to use it. So we have to utilize the gap.
There is a standardized approach to using it. Much like we all are using it to getting into the user panorama possibilities. Simple syllabus.
Still have no answer to it.
That's it.
But
You're
I
absolutely right.
just want to say one thing there. We're not going to have standard. So us striving for a standard is never going to happen. So in that context, how do we thrive and live within the context of our departments, our classrooms first, right? Knowing that we are all going at this in different ways. That is the reality. No one is going to all of a sudden decide that we're not going to be doing this. And even when the policy says don't use it, it's getting used. And we're calling it cheating, and it's not. It's co-creation. You're co-creating something. People think AI copies things. It does not copy things. Large language models produce new language models.
Now, if I ask
So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah,
That's what I want people to recognize, because everyone thinks that just because it was modeled after language, literature, examples of reports, all of that, that somehow it is duplicating those things. That is not what LLMs do. So we need to be clear that that is not what LLMs, how they work. And that's hard to understand because we don't, if we're not data scientists or we're not machine learning specialists, we don't understand that large language models create language examples from scratch. Now, of course, they might grab something from other places, or if you're asking it to do search type environments, but if I'm producing and synthesizing information, then it is creating something brand new. And I do this every single day. And it is not the same as my prior grant proposal that I wrote 2 weeks ago. So I just want to be
So
careful.
what happened between you and I? You know how to use AI. I don't know how to use AI. We answer the same question, assessing the same assessment, and you pass more than me. How can you explain this?
Right, we have to have like foundational critical thinking points. Like that's the part that's like granular, right? When you're thinking about pedagogy and building critical thinking points, you have to have very specific things that you're expecting you to learn about using critical thinking with AI. And that's, that's the granular level that we're not getting into in this workshop. But I would love, I want us all to just simply say, look, there's not going to be a standard, and our discomfort with the lack of a standard has to be the norm. So then how do we operate in that norm? I saw your hand up.
Well, I have a book in financial privilege. Over the last year, we've rewritten the book and put a lot of influence and examples on how to incorporate AI, generative AI, and then what we must work on is predictive AI through neural networks. And what was immediately obvious when I started bringing my homework to you, which is tied to a book, was that a new chapter in my book, we preface it this way, it says that we're co-creating, to use your term, and we encourage the use of generative AI as part of the learning process. So we'll give examples, how you rank it with queries, the whole system on that. So I had a homework that the students take with their assigned ticket. A stop, they have to go and get 5 years worth of data, they have to compute basic statistics, they have to describe the validity of the returns, neural network to predict. And what struck me when I started reading these homeworks, that they have to do a presentation, is that there was no comparison to what I've been doing for the prior 10 years, what the current students turned out. And so then as I talked to the students, I realized that they literally took books on the top of pages of books, uploaded it to their favorite chat program, uploaded my questionnaires, and asked ChatGPT or whatever to generate some answers. But then they learned, which is a key question. So I created a small video, which I'm happy to share if anyone wants to see it. So you can listen to the students themselves present. It's no doubt that they understand what they present, but there's also no doubt from my perspective, when I compare it to my former students, the learning rate and the depth of exposure has increased significantly.
I think that this is excellent conversation. I saw another comment.
Yeah, just really quickly. So I'm from NYU. I teach graduate students in School for Professional Studies. NYU does encourage faculty to use generative AI in teaching and throughout the curriculum. I developed, and this has to do with the silos. I developed an exercise around pricing, one of the 4 Ps, you know, standard marketing, because I teach marketing, standard marketing capabilities that students need to have. And the exercise required them to, in teams, identify the definitions of different aspects of setting pricing strategy, then use the generative AI tool the team is most comfortable with to see what it said about those terms, and then discuss in the team and document the differences between their perception and what generative AI said, and why. Why could it be that there would be a difference in perspective? Now, I found that the students learned and understood much more about pricing having gone through that process. And because they worked in teams, they had the opportunity to talk to each other in a way that they normally would not, because they do it all independently and they just send me something. But I think that there are a number of critical elements. The students need to understand how all their learning integrates. They need to understand how, in many respects, they are better at coming up with substantive communications beyond generative AI. And the other thing I worked with them on in discussion was to say, okay, you're in marketing, but pricing is often thought of as a financial discussion. It's often thought of as a way to increase marketing. And so finance deals with operations, with purchasing, with all of those functions. But ideally, it should be driven by the marketplace. So how do you talk to somebody in finance? What happens when finance decides to increase your cost structure and therefore you have to deal with adjusting the perceived value? What is it you can do in the marketplace to respond to this internal activity? That is the pricing strategy that would be lost if they only dealt with generative AI. And so the idea, trying to get them to think critically and apply their understanding of different functions. How do you communicate in other languages to other people? And how do you assert your responsibility for a particular domain in that environment is, to me, that's the learning. And that can only happen with exercises that leverage as a foundation generative AI. So it's just really, it's delicate and it changes all the time. It changes depending on the learning you want to transfer. It depends on the institution and the students. So it's never the same.
And this is very, very rich discussion. Do you all wanna, share any additional insights? What I will say is this, I think that in everything that I'm hearing, one thing is evident, and that is it's incumbent upon us as faculty and administrators. That we need to become more, AI literate and AI fluent in order to do what we need to do in terms of teaching and administrating. I think one of the things that has just been amazing, and it's a good segue for me at least, that we came together, the three of us, with the different, sort of backgrounds in terms of institutions and all of that. But we came together, Shane was our connector, but we decided to support each other in becoming more AI literate, becoming more AI fluent. JoAnn was teaching us how to build agents on a Zoom call. And Shane and I started doing some of that, and we have just been rocking and rolling ever since. So we're supporting each other in that. But one of the things that we had to do ourselves was to gain more insights and more understanding about this, because we can't help our students develop these capabilities around AI use in a practical way if we don't understand it. And I think that's something that I wanted to really talk about. I will say this, we're blessed. My institution, University of South Carolina, actually has put a lot of resources into AI. So they have created this AI fluency course, which is like an online course. It has a digital badge associated with it. It's available to faculty, staff, and students. Not a lot of faculty or staff or students were taking advantage of it. As a professor, I made it an assignment in the course that I was teaching, and it was a requirement. So it's about 7 or 8 different modules. It took them 3 hours to complete it, but the majority of the students in my course are graduating seniors. They will be walking across the stage here in a couple of weeks. So they are fluent in terms of their understanding of AI. And the other thing that I did in this particular class, and then we're gonna go ahead and kind of wrap things up, is that I had the students working with an executive from Workday. So people familiar with Workday, enterprise software company, okay? I had the students working with an executive from Workday. And we were literally working on a problem that Workday is currently facing inside of this organization, okay? Sort of an org culture or behavior kind of challenge. And they didn't make us sign an NDA, so that's why I'm kind of sharing this to the extent that I am. But what I said to the students was, what I have decided to do is that we're going to build an agent in class that is going to be a team member. I said, each of you are already in teams of 3. You're going to have 1 more team member. Okay. We built an agent in class, and every time they had an assignment, because basically what I did was the team projects sort of built upon themselves. So I tried to really scaffold everything, and we started out with something that was very basic, and there were 5 different assignments that were a part of this project. Each one got more and more in depth, but it built upon the prior one. Every time they finished that assignment, I told them, put this into your agent and ask your agent some very specific questions. And I gave them some questions, some prompts to use. Okay. So they were really using AI as a teammate. This is your teammate. You're getting insights. Many of them were absolutely, it was like mind blown. Like, Dr. Hazzard, are you telling us it's okay to use AI right now? Absolutely. And I'm saying if you don't use it, you're gonna be in trouble. Yeah. So that's really sort of how I approached it with them. But before I could do that, we had to get this brain trust together, and I had to figure out how to do what it is that I was trying to do. But I think one thing that's evident as faculty and administrators, it's incumbent upon us to step up our game. We've got to know more and do more. It's not just about having our discipline specific content knowledge. We can't rest on that anymore. Okay, we cannot. So I think that's something that's super important. With that, unless you all want to make some comments, we were going to kind of go into the audience participation activity. Although y'all are great, y'all been participating the whole time. So we don't want to say things.
A couple of sound bites. One is, I'm a firm believer that we need to start thinking about what's the artistry of AI, because we're, as co-creation agents, we have to think about it in an artistic way. Otherwise, we're going to continue to try to create structures on something that's going to continue to get more and more unstructured. So if we can let go of some of that, even our business minds, which I know it's hard, like spreadsheets are our love language, right? But if we can move beyond that piece of it and start to really talk to students in this way and give them context to be creative with generative AI, they can uncover new ways for them to learn and for us to learn with them. And then you mentioned banning. And so this concept of banning something versus blooming with something, right? Like you pivot from making something a problem to making something a space for creation. That's what
One last thing.
Absolutely.
In January of this year, Isaac McCoy, hopefully still on the line, I think he's physically in South Africa. We did a presentation to the HBCU Business Deans Roundtable about the students we serve. Colleagues, this isn't about us. It's about the trajectory of those careers, of those digital natives and others, and how they will be able to compete, not just today, but 5 years from now. Right now, the big corporations, when they are looking at new hires, if they can't detect some AI acumen, and I'm not talking about for the IT hires, I'm talking about for the marketing, for the management, for the administrative hires. If they can't see, and who is looking at those applications first? It is not people. It is AI systems. And if the system can't see that there is some knowledge or somewhere, it doesn't have to be in the curriculum. We talk about experiential learning, you can get experiential learning not only in internships, but by competitions and case studies. That's experiential learning. They've got to have it from somewhere or they will not be able to compete. And those are the people who are looking to us to help them. So it's not about us, it's about the mission in higher ed. Is to develop and support, no matter what industry throws at us, but to develop those young people to be ready to learn how to learn. That's how I say it. Whatever is coming, it's AI today. It could be quantum tomorrow. Look for it. Can they learn how to learn fast enough that they will be relevant to compete? I'm done.
But not really. Okay, so what we're really hearing, and I think some of you have actually said, is that while some institutions are struggling with whether or not to adopt AI, others are struggling with how to do so without breaking trust, equity, or without disrupting learning, right? So what we would like for you all to do at this point is an interactive activity. And basically we're asking you to diagnose your organization. So have some discussions, I say with, 2 or 3 people around you. As I tell my students all the time, just please make sure everybody is included. No one left out. But we're gonna ask you to have some discussions where really you're thinking about your own organization. How can you map your organization from AI policy maturity, again, from low to high, faculty and staff adoption from low to high, and again, that's adoption of AI, and then student or client use from hidden to explicit. So again, can you map your organization on these 3 factors here, AI policy maturity, faculty and staff AI adoption, and then student or client AI use. And so let's do that. First, we're going to ask you to take maybe about 3 minutes or so. Is that good? Do we have time or?
Thanks, okay.
Okay. It's okay. Let's do that. Have the conversations. I think what we'll do is just sort of walk around while you all are doing that. If you have any questions or whatever, but please come together and begin to have these discussions because you all have already started having some really good, robust discussions, and this is where the learning comes. So thank you all.
Oh.
Okay, fine. Right now or later on? If you,
So there's 2 minute discussions, and we're just gonna ask them about their business alignment and something that we can do in 6 months.
okay,
And it's not a physical group, it's what.
yeah, okay, fine. Yes.
People actually become more dependent.
Yes.
Can I actually using it to but not to actually depend.
That's the area.
And what we talked about was the difference. So AI amplifies the, right? It's like a whole community. It's kind of like positive and also it's like I don't have to think myself. But AI will think for me, and that's what we're talking about. So for faculty, it's about figure out how to design something. And it's right now, what we've got is figure out how to design assignments in such a way that they're not encouraging space. So once we apply thinking for you, does that make sense? But a lot of folks enforce it and then they.
So how can we actually be guys like help us amplify it? Suppose you may imagine that this help me think but not actually go to.
Now, that's a good point. I think if you do that one, you'll be really.
I was actually working on it because I was trying to develop an AI that would do everything, suppose I already have a voice integration on it, so suppose I just speak, his name is Choco, so suppose Choco book an appointment immediately with some restaurant that I
Yeah.
So yeah, I was actually working on it. I succeeded because it was a success. It was a success in being a chatbot and also it was talkative. But in terms of moving inside the device, it was not really, it's not really functioning. So I was thinking of alternative ways. And this actually popped up. We're actually divided or dependent.
And that's not what we're using.
Yeah.
How we think about things there are so few plans that are going to be 100% autonomous, like they're not going to. Now, transactional, yes, those are in both are basically.
Yes.
The transactional, yes, that, but when it comes to higher order needs, it's not always on Zoom. And so what I said to somebody last week was, because I think might well work on so that is I said, we don't know this much. Think about
Yeah, I hope.
I'll see like.
Okay, big one, right? Okay.
May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention? So thank you all so very much. I hate to interrupt the conversation because this is just so it's great to see the conversations that you all are having. What we wanted to do at this point is to go ahead and do a closing, but we're hoping in some of the discussions that as you reflect back, you can consider what is the biggest misalignment based on these things that you talked about, and then what is one action in the next 6 months that you might be able to do to help chart the path forward at your organization. Just in terms of closing reflection, I'll do one really quickly and then defer to my colleagues if they wanted to provide any insights. But from our perspective, AI isn't the strategy in higher ed, it's the stress test. How are we going to react? What are we going to do? And then again, we would like for you to consider what your organization must adapt next. What is it that you need to do next in order to meet this opportunity? I won't call it a challenge, I'll say opportunity. Dr. Shane, do you want to say any to the party words?
Yeah, a couple things based around the policies and stuff that we're talking about. And I think something that comes to mind for me is the real issue with AI isn't that it's being used. It's that we haven't figured out how to see the visibility in our students of human judgment. What does judgment from our students' perspective look like in order for them to do that? And I think AI can actually help us, right? Putting something like that into AI can help us redefine our learning objectives to make them align to this idea of how does judgment for the student in the student's mind show up in the assignment, right? And we need to get that granular with AI. I feel like otherwise we just end up, throwing stuff up against the wall like this. And that's
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Dr. JoAnn.
My suggestion is to start where we are. A lot of times we look at the whole environment and we throw up our hands, but the way you feed an elephant is by start where you are in your organization. Start with you. You might not have control of the whole department. You may not have control of the college, but you can control your workspace, your area. If your student comes to you and says, I'm working on Claude, and you say, who is that? We have that. We have a gap. So model the behavior. Model the behavior of learning to learn. And we, all of us have our credentials, but we must continue to stay on the path and understand that we can't stop. Learning and AI isn't even the driver, it's the world around us that's driving. So if we, I say this often, if we are standing still, we are already left behind. So the critical thinking, the learning, in fact, one of my colleagues, at one of the prestigious institutions is genuinely concerned that they're losing the ability for critical thinking. But as you've heard evidence here in this room, it can enhance and improve. It's how you manage the process. As faculty, we're responsible for managing the process, such as you did in your situation, not outlawing, because it's happening anyway. And it's happening without your guidance. So wherever you are, whether you're just beginning or whether you're a superstar like Dr. Shane here is here, and help, is here, and help others. I often do one-on-one workshops. Why? Because I don't want anyone I know to get left behind. And that includes family, friends. I have lots of AI buddies. And we help each other. And so that's just, things are changing so fast now. I have a sister who is an author. That's all she does. And she has done that for over 10 years. And if something new drops, or ChatGPT or Gemini, she calls me, she emails me, and is like, have you seen this? That we need to go wider among us. Let's not blame anybody else. Let's make this personal. Let's do it ourselves. Let's help our students, let's help our families, let's help our friends.
And my final parting comment, I promise, is this. I think that you just need to move, and do some innovation, right? It doesn't mean that it has to be perfect. You can fix some things that may not land the way that we hope for them to land. But I think we need to move, and I think we need to move somewhat quickly if you're not already moving. So move fast. That actually sounds like the name of a book I just was told a little bit about last week. It's called Move Fast and Move Fast and Fix Things. Haven't read it yet, but really it was what we have to do is to begin to move in this space, and it doesn't mean it has to be perfect. Just like when I stood in front of that class and built that agent with those teams, I have never done that, so never. But we figured it out as we went along. But thank you all so very much for listening. Thank you for actively engaging, and we're here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. JoAnn Rolle, Dr. Hazzard, and Dr. Snipes, if I said that correctly. Yes. It was a very, very interesting, interactive, and timely presentation, interactive presentation that we all loved. Now, moving on to the next session, which